G'day battlers, and today we are diving back into the realms of PvPoke to take a look at the brand new Pokemon that has just been released, Corviknight, and take a look at sort of how its matchups work in the Great League. As you can already see on the screen, it is rank 6 on PvPoke in the Great League. It's also rank 1 in the Ultra League. Today we're going to be focusing in on the Great League though, and I'm going to be taking a look at all of its matchups, essentially. Take a look at what moveset is actually best for your Corviknight, where IVs might matter, where you might need to get some bait to get some wins, all of that and more as we sort of, go into episode 4 of the Deep Dive series. Now, the last one was actually about Galarian Corsola, if you want to go back and watch that one. Essentially, we were looking at whether the IVs really matter, whether you need an egg IV Corsola, whether that one will still work, or if you really need that good IV Corsola. And I think that's going to be a concern here as well, because it is pretty tricky to get a Corviknight at the moment. You can only get it through 2-kilometer eggs, magnetic laws, and it is in Go Battle League rewards as well, but there's a lot of Pokemon in Go Battle League rewards, so it's going to be a tricky one to get, especially with good IVs, so we'll see how much that does matter as we go through today. So being number 6 on PvPoke, obviously it has some things going for it, and I think that it's really twofold. Thing number 1 is that it has a really good typing. It is a steel flying type, so it's just like Skarmory, and so with that comes a lot of resistances. So on the PvPoke page, we can sort of scroll down, take a look at the resistances tab, and we've got Poison, Grass, Bug, Steel, Psychic, Normal, Ground, Flying, Fairy, and Dragon. That's 10 typings that it resists, which is kind of ridiculous. Obviously there's, some different levels as well. Some of them are double resisted, 3 of them are double resisted, which is kind of crazy, and you are only weak to 2 typings, electric and fire, which means, I guess, 2 things. Number 1, it means that Corviknight is an absolute unit against pretty much everything in the meta, and number 2, it means that to really counter it down, you might be looking in hard counter territory, especially with the fire, but maybe with some electric as well. But, I said there were 2 things going for it. Obviously, that's one of them. It's a really impressive typing, but the other thing is its stat product, which I believe Z's Wireless put on Twitter, something along the lines of it has the stat product of a small nation, and that definitely is the case. It is a very, very bulky bird, and we'll sort of see that as we go through the matchups and see how little damage it actually takes from some of these charge attacks. But really quickly, taking at the key wins, we've got key wins against Clodsire, Jumpluff, Azumarill, Shadow Drapion, and Shadow Feraligatr. Some of these matchups are really clear cut, like that Jumpluff matchup is going to be hard for Corviknight to lose. Some of them are a little bit more, could go either way, like Shadow Feraligatr. Again, we'll get into all of that in a little while. And its key losses here, Galarian Corsola, which is kind of a crazy one because it is obviously one of the other bulky monsters going around at the moment. Talonflame with that hard counter fire damage, and then we've got Mandibuzz, Diggersby, and Malamar here as well. So again, we'll get into these matchups as we go. But first question of the day is movesets. So Corviknight has sort of gone back and forth a little bit in terms of the movesets that it did have in the Game Master, and we've essentially landed on these ones. So these are its fast attacks. We've got access to Sand Attack, Air Slash, and Steel Wing. I've got it ordered here by energy per turn. So if you want the maximum amount of energy, you're going for Sand Attack, followed by Air Slash, followed by Steel Wing. But Sand Attack has a little bit more going for it than just that. It is also a 1-turn move, whereas Air Slash is 3 turns and Steel Wing is 2 turns. So you can really, do a bit more, get optimal move timing against a lot of other Pokemon just by having that 1-turn advantage, but having Sand Attack also gives you that ability to just have that little bit more coverage against a lot of Pokemon, the Steel types that don't care as much about your Flying and Steel moveset. So I think that Sand Attack is sort of the, potentially the best way to go, and I say this especially because its charge attacks are actually quite expensive, and we'll get into that in a sec, but essentially, if you do want to go for a bit more damage, you can probably go towards that Steel Wing, because it is doing the same amount of energy per turn as Air Slash, but it does have a little bit of a higher damage per turn, and is a 2-turn move instead of a 3-turn move, which can be pretty handy as well. But overall, this video, we're going to simplify it down a little bit, and we are just going to be looking at Sand Attack. We're going to neglect the other 2, but, let me know in the comments if there are some other move sets where that does matter a little bit more. The main bit is going to be the charge attacks, and there are 3 viable charge attacks, as we said. We've got the Iron Head, we've got Sky Attack, and we've got Payback. Important note about Iron Head is that you can only, it's going to become a legacy move. So if you evolve a Corviknight during this event where it is released, you will get Iron Head on that Corviknight. After that, it's going to be Elite TM only, which is a little bit dodge, especially when it is so hard to actually get a good IV one, but, you know, we'll see if that really matters. So from after this event, Sky Attack Payback is going to be the default moveset unless you want to spend an Elite TM. Now, this is very much sort of a tiered system where Iron Head is the cheapest move with 50 energy, and then you go 55 energy and then 60 energy for Payback, and the efficiency, sort of the damage per energy, gets a little bit better with each attack as well. So you get a little bit more bang for your buck every sort of tier that you move down. And so there's a lot of different opinions about which combination of movesets you should run. And so we'll be looking at that a little bit. And let's just start off with a quick little matrix sim to take a look at which ones actually do get some other, maybe pick up some wins. We've got 3 Corviknights here in the Matrix simulation, just up against the default Open Great League meta. We've got one with Sky Attack and Iron Head, which I'm going to consider sort of the default Corviknight. We've got one where we've ditched the Iron Head for Payback, the sort of post-event Corviknight moveset, and then we have the Iron Head Payback moveset, where you've sort of thrown out Sky Attack in favor of that a little bit more efficient Payback move as well. So let's scroll down to the one shield scenario, and obviously we've got all the matchups here, but if we scroll all the way down, we can see the differences. So we've got the default Sky Attack Iron Head as the baseline here. If you run Payback instead of instead of Iron Head, sorry, we've lost Drill Peck. We do actually pick up the Corviknight mirror match against the Sky Attack Iron Head, and we also get a draw up against the Sky Attack Payback, which we are the Sky Attack Payback, so that makes sense. But we're actually going to be picking up losses against Annihilape, against Carbink, and against Licky. Now, Carbink makes sense because our big attack into Carbink is that Iron Head, because it is that double super effective into the Rock Fairy type. Not having that really holds us back. Annihilape is going to be a bit of an interesting one, and it's one that we're just going to have to wait and see what that looks like, because you'll also see the Payback Iron Head moveset loses as well. And so I'm going to assume that it is some level of you get the Iron Head bait and then you land the Sky Attack and you like barely win out or something like that. We'll find out. Licky is a bit of an interesting one. We're not really going to get into this in this video, but clearly that Iron Head, a little bit of an energy advantage really just does help clinch out that win. Really close one. And then if you're on Payback instead of Sky Attack, you again pick up the Corviknight matchup, and then you lose Annihilape as well. You lose Azumarill and you lose Shadow Drapion as well. Azumarill, because Azumarill doesn't really care about either of your 2 charge attacks. Sky Attack was really helpful there. Shadow Drapion, also a bit of an interesting one, and we'll just have to wait and see what that does unfold. It might just be the fact that it is resisting that Payback. So we'll take a look at all 3 of these movesets a little bit. The other big comparison obviously is going to be the IVs, and so I've got a few different Corviknights here just for a quick comparison with Sky Attack and Iron Head. We have the default Corviknight that is going to have the PvPoke default Corviknight with IVs of 5, 8, 15. We've got the rank 1 Corviknight, which again, going to be pretty hard to get, but it is that 0, 13, 14. We've got an attack weighted Corviknight as well, just because sometimes that really does matter in some of these matchups. Having that attack breakpoint can really win some matchups for you. And then we have this sort of like egg IV Corviknight. So this one is a 10, 14, 15. If you're only hatching your 2-kilometer eggs and that's how you're getting your Corviknights, then, you know, this is the sort of IV that you're really going to be targeting. That might be pretty good. Like, it's ranked 667, but we'll see how it does actually play out. So we'll scroll down again. We've got all the matchup data here, but we can just take a quick look at the summary table of, you know, how do they actually differentiate themselves. The rank 1 Corviknight is actually going to pick up the Greninja matchup over the sort of default rank 100-ish. Which is pretty interesting. And you also pick up the Corviknight mirror match. You actually lose against Feraligatr and you lose against Alolan Sandslash. So I have a feeling that this is going to be breakpoint dependent, and we'll take a look at that in a second. I have a feeling we're going to be doing a little less damage, and that little bit of damage that we're losing is going to be that really fine difference in these matchups. We can see the attack weighted one actually does pick up Diggersby, and it picks up Malamar, which is quite interesting, as those were like 2 of the key losses, weren't they, on the PvPoke rankings? So that's going to be interesting to look at. But we are losing it against Annihilape. Even with the good moveset, all of a sudden we lose the Annihilape matchup like the other movesets did, and then Shadow Feraligatr also becomes a loss, because I guess we're probably taking a little bit more damage from the Hydro Cannons that really we just can't hang on to. And then this like Egg IV one is actually almost identical to the default sim. We lose the Corviknight mirror match against the default sim, but like on the surface level, this actually doesn't look too bad. But let's quickly take a look at the breakpoints. Well, this is the amount of damage that your fast moves are doing. So you can see that most of them are going to be the same, 2-2-2, 2-2-2, 2-2-2, 2-2-2. But there are a few little differences. So As expected, when we go from the sort of rank 100, the default IV, to the rank 1 Corviknight, all of a sudden, we actually do 1 less damage per fast move against a Shadow, Alolan Sandslash, and actually also against Toxapex. Now, in the Corsola video, we talked about how for Corsola, it doesn't actually matter that much because Astonish is a 3-turn move, and so that's only 1 less damage every 1.5 seconds. With Sand Attack, we are looking at a 1-turn move, which means that this is 1 damage every half second. So in that 1.5 seconds that it took Corsola to do 1 extra damage, we're doing 3. So we can actually really propel the matchup quite a bit. And so it does really hurt when you do lose that breakpoint up against Shadow, Alolan Sandslash, and I guess Toxapex as well, although we'll have to wait and see what that matchup actually looks like anyway, because I think Corviknight is fine losing that breakpoint, I'll put it that way. Again, interesting though, the attack weighted does actually pick up an extra damage per turn against Diggersby and against Shadow Drapion, which kind of makes sense in a sense that Shadow Drapion is going to be taking that super effective damage. Diggersby, a bit of an interesting one, and one that we will look at in a bit as well. Egg IV, again, not actually having any breakpoint differences compared to the sort of default IV. So it's really telling me that we might even be able to simplify this problem to just Egg IV and sort of ignore this default IV, because surprisingly, they seem pretty similar. But we'll look at bulk points as well, see if other Pokemon are going to be doing more damage to us. And whoa, the rank 1, all of a sudden we are taking a lot less fast move damage across the board. 1 less damage from Annihilape, Bibarel, Carbink, Greninja, Shadow Alolan Marowak, Shadow Marowak, Quagsire, Shadow, and Talonflame as well. So doing pretty well on that front. The attack weighted, we're taking 1 extra damage from Charjabug, Drifblim, Stunfisk, and Talonflame. We're probably losing these matchups anyway, so I wouldn't be too concerned about that, to be honest. And Corviknight with the Egg IV actually also still picks up that Annihilape one, where the default one doesn't. This Egg IV is kind of crazy, so maybe actually look for this thing. As we go through the matchups, we're going to be looking at all of that data as well, but let's just start off plain and simple with the regular default Corviknight, Sand Attack, Sky Attack, Iron Head in the 1 shield scenario, and we can sort of just see the matchups that it does well in. So for those that aren't big PvPoke aficionados, bigger number means good for a Corviknight. Once it gets past 500, when it becomes lower than 500, all of a sudden we are losing. So as you'd expect, we're a Steel Flying type. We've got Flying type damage with Sky Attack. We're incredibly bulky. We're going to have a really good time up against the bugs and the grasses. So Ariados gone, Chestnut gone, Serperior gone, Jumpluff gone. Those matchups are going to be really, really tough for them. We're also picking up Toxapex because Toxapex just really, we're resisting its big poison damage. Brine isn't too bad for us because we are so bulky, and we are just able to output more consistent damage onto the Toxapex in return. Clodsire also showing up in the wins here. This moveset is Sludge Bomb, Earthquake. Both of these movesets are resisted by the Corviknight. Even Stone Edge isn't that good into Corviknight, but we'll see that in a little bit as well, because we're going to look at the Clodsire matchup. We're picking up Carbink because we are running Iron Head, so Iron Head is going to pick up that win. Alolan Shadow Sandslash, a similar story where Iron Head really helps us out. Azumarill actually in the win column here as well. I think that one's going to be a little more interesting. I'll be interested to see how that one looks when we dive in a little deeper. Picking up Wigglytuff because it's a fairy as well. Guzzlord can't do too much to us. There's the Clodsire with Stone Edge moveset. Not as good as the Sludge Bomb version, but still pretty good. We get wins against Shadow Marowak, Feraligatr, Dash Bun, Drapion. We've got wins again to Dunsparce, Licky, Cresselia, Gastrodon, Shadow Feraligatr, Annihilape, and of course the tie into Corviknight. And then there's the sort of losses, I suppose, where we've actually got a grass type here in a Abomasnow, which is kind of interesting. Just Powder Snow, Icy Wind being quick enough that it's actually able to add up into that Corviknight, I guess, while we're only doing Sand Attack as our fast moves. But as you would expect, the big losers for Corviknight are going to be that big Incinerate coming from Talonflame, Electric Damage coming from Charjabug, Fire Spins coming from Shadow, Alolan Marowak. We've got Stunfisk here as well with more Electric Damage. Interesting that Primeape is here with Karate Chop, Rage Fist, Close Combat. That's going to be an interesting one to look at, I think. It's probably just the fast pacing of Rage Fist, letting it ramp up and get that big damage through. Drifblim also a win here. It's quite bulky. You've got access to Icy Wind and Shadow Ball that can really add up as well. Greninja showing up here with some really speedy Hydro Cannons. And so there's sort of a bit of a pattern here where either you've got really hard counter damage, or you are quite an aggressive Pokemon where you are able to output a lot of damage a lot faster than Corviknight is able to do it back, and a lot faster than it is able to take it. Because as much as it is a very bulky Pokemon, at some point its HP does run out. So I think we're going to structure this video in a sense that obviously you can skip around in the timestamps below. We're going to start with its good matchups and then progressively move towards the bad matchups. So we'll see how the wins go, whether they might actually be tighter than you'd expect. And then we'll look at the bad matchups to see if we can find any win conditions where you may not expect. I forgot to mention this, but we are going to be sort of focusing in on the Play Pokemon Championship circuit in terms of the Pokemon that are really showing up quite a bit. So we're going to be going through all 12 of these Pokemon that were sort of in that day 2 top player usage in the Birmingham Regional Championships, but then we'll also look at a few other Pokemon like Clodsire, like Dunsparce, that potentially didn't quite make the cut here, but you're still going to see very, very often in the Great League. So, but as I said, let's start off with those grass types. As I said, let's start really simple. Jumpluff is going to be a really easy one. I've literally just put Sky Attack here, take Drill Peck away, and we are winning this one handily. I mean, by the end of this, we've still got a third of our health left. They've got nothing. Shield scenarios, I mean, look how strong we are. Like, even if we're down a shield, we're still actually going to be winning. 2 shield scenario though, we're actually losing this. How? What happens? We don't quite have enough health in the tank. And so this last Aerial Ace does take us out. We're not really close to another charge move either. So we just sort of get done by the fact that Jumpluff gets 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 moves in the time that we only get 3. So, you know, with a little bit of energy advantage, like, you know, it says 8 turns, it would flip it. But also, if we just throw Iron Head, I keep going to say Drill Peck because it was one of the original moves that it was supposed to have. We still lose and we don't actually pick up that much. It's still just throwing Sky Attacks. I guess it's just now 7 turns because we throw the Iron Head to KO instead of the Sky Attack. What if we go for like perfect baits? Okay, yeah, it's still 5 turn losses. So we're still going to lose this matchup even with the bait move. And Payback isn't going to help us out either because it's more expensive and it doesn't do as much as Sky Attack will do. So interesting that you can lose the 2 shield to 0 shield scenario. So watch out for that one, I guess. But Serperior, also going to be a similar story in that we are absolutely crushing here. Sky Attacks all the way down and we have quite a bit of health left in the tank. But against Serperior, it is even better because we are even winning the 2 shield to 0 shield, deficit, I suppose. So yeah, this one's pretty much locked in. That one's going to be fine for us. And we even survive with, you know, a good 6 health. So that is going to be a little IV dependent. You know, if we have that like super attack weighted, I know we actually still even win. But it does get, it's less close because we're doing more damage with the Sky Attacks. So it doesn't even matter. So yeah, we shouldn't spend that much time on these because it's pretty hardcore. Ariados, again, we're just going to be dominating this matchup. Even, you know, regardless of lunges and trailblazers, you're going to be pretty solid here. You can see we're winning all shield scenarios. It's a lock. Let's get into the ground types maybe. We've got Shadow Marowak here. He's actually a bit of a close one here. So with Iron Head and Sky Attack, you can see we've only got 4 turns difference actually separating it. That does mean that even if we swap this over to a pure Sky Attack, you will still win. It is still going to be close though, but I have a sense that this could be IV dependent. So let's take a look at our sort of rank 1, our maximized Corviknight, and all of a sudden we do a little bit better just because we have a little bit more health and we're still able to KO that Marowak before it gets to these last moves. I mean, the benefit that we sort of have here over Marowak is that Sky Attack does almost half of Marowak's health, whereas even Rock Slide, its best move into Corviknight, only does 28% of our health. So we really have that going for us, while we're also really resisting their Mud Slap damage. Our Sand Attack damage is a little bit more threatening. We're actually doing an equal amount of damage. You know, we do 2 damage 3 times, and they do 1 Mud Slap every 3 turns. So we do the same amount of damage, but we have a little bit more health. So definitely have the advantage in this one. What happens if we go for that attack weighted Corviknight though? Do we all of a sudden like lose this matchup? And again, this is like a bad attack weighted. Like, this is more than attack weighted. This is just a just attack, and we actually still win the matchup here. So they're pretty handy. But what happens if we start throwing Payback around? Like, if we go Iron Head Payback, we lose out on Sky Attack. We actually still win. Iron Head still baiting, and we get the Payback through as well. The Iron Head bait is sort of helping us though. What if we go straight Payback? We still win. And then what if we go back to our like default IVs with the straight Payback? Yeah, we still win as well. So it's another one that's like a pretty decent matchup. If we go to the shield scenarios, if we have a shield disadvantage, we lose. We actually lose the 0s and the 2s, it says here. Although this is with just straight payback. So let's maybe set it back to... Actually, what if we go straight Sky Attack? Because I think that is going to be sort of a default scenario to be in. We actually do still get the 2 shields if we go straight Sky Attack. 1 turn difference though, so that is very IV dependent. So I wouldn't really rely on going for that straight Sky Attack. And then maybe... Well, if we go the 0 shield scenario, how do we lose this? It's 1 turn again, so again, IV dependent. Okay, this Rock Slide just barely KOs it. It's literally 1 HP difference. We have 44 HP left, 144 damage move, and we're getting we actually have the Sky Attack. So if we have a rank 1, whoops, I attack weighted it, rank 1 Corviknight, as bulky as we can get, all of a sudden we actually flip the 0 shield because we survived the Rock Slide and we get that Sky Attack off. So a little bit interesting here. We also still win all even scenarios. So I guess when you're into Marowak, better IVs are actually better. You're almost even winning the 1 shield down scenario. It's a 1 turn difference. And because Corviknight is running that 1 turn fast attack, as soon as you swap in, if your opponent is half a second behind you, all of a sudden you will actually be able to take that matchup out. So, you know, pretty handy one. Definitely not a matchup that Marowak is going to be swapping into, and not a matchup that Marowak wants to be in, to say the least. But at the same time, Corviknight won't necessarily want to swap in either. If it's the lead scenario, you'd be happy to be the Corviknight, but it's not a matchup that either of you are going to be looking for. I did say that we were going to look at Clodsire, so let's take a look at Clodsire. So at the moment, we've got default moves all around, Sky Attack, Iron Head, and we've got Sludge Bomb, Earthquake. As I said, this is going to be the best moveset for Corviknight because Sludge Bomb does 11%, 12% of our health. Earthquake does 26%, and it costs a lot more. So we are dominating this matchup. We have half of our health left by the time we just Sky Attack down. We don't even throw baits. It's totally fine. We even win the 2 shield to 0 scenario. It's close. Like, you wouldn't rely on winning this matchup. And we are doing Iron Head bait shenanigans here. What if we just go straight Sky Attack? I think we still just barely win this. It's even closer and becomes much more IV dependent. So again, it's pretty rare that you're going to find yourself in a matchup where you have a full health Corviknight into a full health Clodsire going head to head, and you're down 2 shields. Obviously, this could happen in the lead scenario. So the Clodsire player, if you're in the lead, could decide to go down 2 shields. But with the game being as dynamic as it is at the moment, they're almost never going to play that out by going down 2 shields, especially not shielding a bulky Pokemon like Clodsire, which part of its entire value is that you don't have to invest as many shields in it. They're going to have other Pokemon that they might try and, you know, dynamically swap in, something like a Feraligatr or, you know, Drapion even. Something to add up damage with a little bit more pressure, where their shields are actually better spent. So I wouldn't be too worried about this matchup, to be honest. And even best case scenario for Clodsire, it's got Sludge Bomb, it gets successful baits whenever it wants it. It has Stone Edge as well as the best damaging move. You're doing almost 32% of Corviknight's health per Stone Edge. Corviknight is still able to just straight Sky Attack this one down. No Drill Peck shenanigans required. And you can see that we do lose the 0s here, again, because we are running that straight Sky Attack. But as soon as we invest a shield, we're looking pretty good here. Although one thing that is going to be interesting to check is what happens if you are looking at the Iron Head Payback moveset. So if we go Iron Head Payback, we do still win the scenario even with the best possible Clodsire moveset and successful baits with Sludge Bomb. We do have a successful bait coming in from Corviknight, so let's ask the question, what happens if you go straight Payback? Still win. You don't even need to bait. You can still win straight Payback with best possible moveset for Clodsire, which, to be honest, Clodsire almost always has Earthquake. Like, it is so rare to run Sludge Bomb Stone Edge that this almost isn't a worry. Most likely, you're going to be in a dominant scenario as the Corviknight going into Clodsire, which, with it being a very popular Pokemon in the Great League, it does put you in a pretty strong position. Although, granted, it didn't show up in the top 12 of day 2 in Birmingham, so maybe it's on its way out, and Corviknight is definitely going to help put that nail in the coffin. Let's start getting a little bit more interesting by taking a look at the matchups that aren't so good for Corviknight. We've looked at all these ones that it just completely dominates, but this is a ground type that has a fire type move and does actually beat up Corviknight. But I do have to say, before we get into it, shout out to Debbie Pebble for gifting me the Patreon membership to PvPoke. Support PvPoke. work, but we have had to turn off ads for the rest of this stream because there were some scantily clad ads that were popping up, and I didn't want to sort of edit around it every time I scrolled between this screen and this screen. So shout out to Pebble, support PvPoke because he is a legend. But you can see here in the one shield scenario with our drill, I keep saying drill, I'll get it eventually, maybe, to like the end of the video where I'm still saying drill peck. We have our Iron Head Sky Attack moveset. Straight Fire Punch Diggersby can actually take us all the way down. And if we go into this matchup, like, it is clearly not looking great for us. We're getting Fire Punch down in all even scenarios, even with a 1 shield advantage when we use 2 shields, Diggersby's 1. It's a combination of being really fast to get up to the Fire Punch. It only takes 10 turns to get to a Fire Punch. It takes us a little bit longer to get to our moves, and they don't hit as hard in the sense that they don't have that super effective punch. Plus, Fire Punch was just buffed in this season as well, so it is even better than it would have been before. And so we really need sort of we need Diggersby to not use a single shield to actually get any sort of win here. And to be honest, there's no moveset that is going to be able to really come back from this. Like, we could have Iron Head Payback. We're still going to be losing this, even though Payback is a little more efficient. It's not efficient enough to overcome that Fire Punch. And you can see the shield scenarios are the same. So I don't see a way for Corviknight to get past this one, regardless of what your IVs are, just because Fire Punch is a little bit too dominant. So let's maybe take a look at some matchups that are a bit more neutral. And actually, let's start off with one that we know has some IV shenanigans and moveset shenanigans, and that is Annihilape. So, default Corviknight, default movesets all around, default Annihilape as well. We can see that Corviknight barely gets this win out here with an Iron Head bait and landing the Sky Attack. Now, even if we threw double Sky Attack, actually, what happens if we hit double Sky Attack? Because we're going to get hit by an extra counter. We actually lose because we just can't survive that extra counter damage that all of a sudden we have the move, but we're not able to throw it because Annihilape actually wins charge attack priority. So you can really see how close this matchup is. And that's really why IVs become so important in this 1 shield scenario. So for example, if we set it to that maximized rank 1 Corviknight, we actually do still lose here. We still are not able to get that last. Well, I guess the problem is that this close combat is doing 92 damage and, we really want to get this Sky Attack off, but it's we don't have 92 health to survive it to get through the charge attack priority. So I guess Drill Peck is actually the big important thing here, regardless of our IVs, because it is that charge attack in the 1 shield scenario. So yeah, it really is just getting this Iron Head off that actually helps us be that just a little bit ahead. So you can see the PvPoke simulation forces them to throw Rage Fist here to try and get as much damage as possible rather than waiting the extra counter to try and get that close combat through, which is pretty handy to know. If we sort of ditch Iron Head though, that's where it comes in, the movesets, right? So if we have Iron Head, we can barely get the win in the 1 shield. If we don't have Iron Head, we can't do it. If you land a single payback, it does only do 52% of Annihilape's health, so it doesn't do as much as you'd like. It is actually Sky Attack does even more damage here because fighting resist dark. So Sky Attack is your big move here. So it's like you may as well not even consider payback. It is Iron Head Sky Attack shenanigans, but you can see here that we do win the 0 shields with that. As soon as we land a Sky Attack, we're looking pretty good, and Annihilape doesn't really get the chance to get boosted. 1 Sky Attack does 77% of Annihilape's health. So it really is just about landing that Sky Attack. Because then, like the 2 shield scenario, we're just being prevented from landing it, while Annihilape gets 3 Rage Fists off, which is all that it needs, just before we get a charge move as well. Iron Head won't be enough. 55 damage to a 61 health Annihilape. Technically, there's some IV shenanigans there. If you're, a little bit attack weighted and they're a little bit attack weighted as well, which there are a lot of attack weighted Annihilapes that are running around because there's some funky shenanigans there, but even then, you aren't going to quite get there in the 2 shield, and this really isn't where Corviknight thrives, and quite frankly, the 2 shield scenario is where Annihilape thrives. So if you're in a low shield scenario, Corviknight will be pretty decent, but I don't love the 1 shield. Even though the default simulations has it as a win for Corviknight, I wouldn't really consider it so. It does feel like the 0 shield is the only safe shield scenario for the Corviknight here. Primeape was on its losses as well, and if we look at this, I feel like it's going to be pretty similar. We're on the 2 shield, I think, potentially, and we're losing... yeah, we're losing the 1 shield, we're losing the 2 shield, we win the 0 shield because, again, we get to land that Sky Attack before Primeape is able to get any sort of setup going. So you can see here in the 1 shield, we go for the Iron Head bait, well, we get the Iron Head bait, and then we're going to get KO'd by that 3rd Rage Fist before we can get a charge move off. We have an Iron Head. Again, it's sort of like enough damage that, like, if you have 1 Sand Attack of advantage, if you have that ability to get your Iron Head off before they get their 3rd Rage Fist off, there's actually a pretty decent chance that you will be able to KO. So maybe that's the other scenario, is that if your Corviknight has any sort of energy advantage going into either Primeape or Annihilape, you actually will have a bit more of a chance, I suppose. Iron Head isn't guaranteed because, again, we're looking at the IVs here, and, like, you know, maybe if we have, again, just for simplicity, we're going to maximize attack on Primeape here, sorry. All of a sudden, well, we still lose here, but Iron Head all of a sudden would be enough to KO. So if you had that 1 turn, that 1 Sand Attack advantage, and you get your Iron Head off before they get their Rage Fist, you would win that matchup if it was an attack-weighted Annihilape. So there's win cons available to you. There's just not potentially win cons that you can really lean on and rely upon in your games. So one of those things that if you're really the type of player that can sort of learn what IVs your opponent is probably running based on your own matchups in game number 1, maybe you can apply it to game number 2. But I think the safe play is assume that you are generally going to lose the 1 shield scenario unless you have an energy advantage. Then you might actually have that big chance, especially if you have a few Sand Attacks. If you have enough Sand Attacks advantage that you're going to be able to get double Sky Attack off, you can sort of guarantee that you are either going to get both of their shields or you will win switch advantage. So it is quite a handy place to be. Taking a look at the most used Pokemon from the Birmingham Regional Championships Day 2, we've got Shadow Drapion, again with its classic moveset of Aqua Tail and Crunch. And in the default simulation, we're just going straight Crunch on Drapion's side, and we can just Iron Head, Sky Attack, win, which pretty much tells me that we can just straight Sky Attack win as well. And yeah, that would tell you as much. If you look at the shielding scenarios, straight Sky Attack, we win the 0 shields as well. We do lose the 2 shields if we go straight Sky Attack. Only 3 turns in it, which potentially tells you that Drill Peck could be the winning factor here. Now, the important thing to note whenever you look at something like Drapion is that the way that PvPoke has sort of coded these matchups to go is it will only get the sort of debuff at the sort of statistical last spot. So because Crunch is a 30% chance debuffing move, it will happen on the 3rd move in the PvPoke simulation. So if the Crunch happens earlier, then, you know, what happens? We can explore. So, well, actually, we're already losing in the 2 shield scenario. But so I guess the point here is even with no debuffs on the table, Drapion is still able to get the win here with straight Crunch. Well, actually, it's throwing the Aqua Tail here, but Aqua Tail and Crunch aren't that different in that you should be able to throw straight Crunch in this matchup. And it'll make it look slightly better, I guess, because you're getting this Crunch debuff on the 3rd one all of a sudden. But Corviknight still loses, granted, barely. So, you know, if Corviknight is a little bit bulkier, has a little bit more, is a better IV Corviknight, then maybe we actually survive this. It's a little bit unrealistic, I guess. And so if you throw Aqua Tail back in there, just so we sort of throw an Aqua Tail at some point, Corviknight's still losing. But it's really close in the 2 shield. The 1 shield isn't that close. Well, it's close-ish in that it's 7 turns difference. So you're really just scared of the fact of like, well, even if you get a Crunch off, right? Oh, now we're getting IV dependent. Okay, so new knowledge unlocked. If Drapion has an energy advantage, and you swap your Corviknight into Drapion with energy, and this happens a lot because Drapion is very often used as that safe swap Pokemon because it can be so deadly with a bit of energy up its sleeve. You can lose this one not only on, you know, just maybe it's got so much energy it gets an extra Aqua Tail, but even just if it has that one little extra ability to get this Crunch off. Because if we can get this Crunch off, you can see this does 59 damage. We've got 64 health left on the sort of main default IV. Now, what if we don't actually have Sky Attack? What if we're running Iron Head Payback instead? We don't have that high damaging Sky Attack move, and we also can't really use our Payback because Payback is actually going to do less damage than Iron Head. Not just like less efficient, it will do less damage because it's resisted. So it's essentially what is the straight Iron Head matchup look like, and we are actually losing the 1 shield scenario. We're getting close to actually not that close to another Iron Head. Drapion is getting pretty low though, so this one could be IV dependent. dependent. So what if they haven't had an opportunity to farm up their Shadow Drapions? They don't really have a good one. It's just they've got some, run-of-the-mill 10, 11, 11, rank 3000 Shadow Drapion. All of a sudden, we actually do get the win here. The Iron Heads are enough damage. Actually, no, the Sand Attack is doing 1 extra damage. So this is that sort of breakpoint scenario. So this is actually also, if we have the default Shadow Drapion, and we go back to that high attack and maximize our attack Corviknight, we do an extra 1 damage per Sand Attack, and this is actually a matchup that we can flip straight Iron Head. So again, we already win the 1 shield scenario if we have Sky Attack. But if we don't have Sky Attack and you run an attack-weighted Corviknight, then you can still cheese out that win up against the Drapion in the 1 shield. So you don't pick up any shielding scenarios that you wouldn't get otherwise with the Sky Attack scenario, but it is what it is. And maybe just something to know, because I know there's some content creators that are putting out some videos that are really pushing the the Iron Head payback moveset. Look, personally, I think that Sky Attack is really the way to go. It's a shame to be a flyer that can't do any flying things at all, but I really think it does help you out in a lot of scenarios, and this Drapion matchup is really one of them, where you can still not necessarily need to run that crazy attack weight IV and still be able to get some wins in up against that Shadow Drapion. Let's take a look at another one of the sort of big Pokemon that we used in Birmingham, and that is Shadow Feraligatr. And then we'll look at regular Feraligatr afterwards. But again, back to our default movesets, Hydro Cannon, Ice Beam also as well. In the 1 shield scenario, Corviknight is winning here. We've got an Iron Head bait and then land the Sky Attack. And we've got 2 Shadow Claws away from the Hydro Cannon, and we're not really that close to another move. So this Sky Attack is doing 73 damage, where Feraligatr has 69 health remaining, which does sort of flag like, well, watch to see what happens with the sort of regular Gator, non-Shadow Gator. But the Hydro Cannons really do a lot of damage, and I'm going to say the same thing that I've been saying in pretty much every episode of this Matchup Mastery series, in that Shadow Feraligatr is a good safe swap. If Shadow Feraligatr swaps in, it gets a little bit of energy, all of a sudden, you're going to swap in your Corviknight, you're going to have a bad time, they're going to Hydro Cannon you down, you're going to invest all of your shield so that you beat this Feraligatr, and then they're going to have some Clodsire in the back that just, sweeps you anyway. And so it gets pretty dicey. So you do see that because we're barely winning out this 1 shield scenario, we are still losing the 0 shield scenario because the Hydro Cannon is outpacing us. So they get 2. They do about half of our health each. Boom, boom, we're gone. We're not that close to another charge move. In the 2 shield, it's a similar scenario where they're outpacing us. So Hydro Cannon 1, Hydro Cannon 2, shield. We just barely get our Iron Head shielded here. We're going for the bait move and getting them successfully shielded. And then all of a sudden, we've lost half of our health to Shadow Claws alone. And then that last Hydro Cannon does the last half of our health. It's dire straits if we do get in these scenarios. Again, even the 1 shield scenario isn't that good for us. And what happens if we don't have Iron Head? I think we can still win straight Sky Attack. Okay, we do just win straight Sky Attack. But again, this is going to be pretty IV dependent, I think. Or what if we have Payback Iron Head? And this is one where Payback does do a bit more damage if we can land one. And we do still win. So, Payback isn't that much more energy than Sky Attack is. So this scenario where we get the Iron Head bait, we land the Payback, it does still work. Although if we don't have the Iron Head bait, if we try and go straight Payback, we do barely win. But are you really going to trust 2 health? I mean, this is the scenario where, if we have slightly worse IVs, set it to the egg IVs, right? Let's set it to 10, 14, 15. You're not going to be able to straight Payback. You just lose the Payback matchup because you don't get this last one off. Whereas if you throw a Iron Head back in, you do sort of, again, clinch that tight win, but it's not guaranteed. It's a pretty rough one. Corviknight definitely not going down in history as a Shadow Feraligatr counter, but technically you can get the win out. It's not one that you're going to want to come into if Feraligatr has any energy advantage though. So keep that in mind. And I think regular Feraligatr is probably going to be pretty similar. If we start with the Iron Head Payback, go backwards, we still win this one. This looks pretty much identical. We actually win the 2 shield scenario though this time. Yes, the Hydro Cannons, they're only doing 40% now instead of 50%. The Shadow Claws have brought us down to a little less than a half health. We have a little bit more than a half health remaining. Hydro Cannon doesn't do half of our health. So we actually survived to get this last move off. But, caveat, big asterisk, this is with 2 successful Iron Head baits. If we don't get any Iron Head baits, or if we go straight Iron Head, we're not going to win this matchup. If we go straight Payback, we're not going to win this matchup. If we go straight Sky Attack, maybe we could win this matchup. Nah, we still can't win this matchup. 1 turn of difference. Although this was looking with the Egg IVs though. So if we go default, we probably do have that little bit of extra bulk. No, we still actually lose. Interesting. This Hydro Cannon, we have 8 HP remaining. This Hydro Cannon is doing 61 health. So it is just about the pacing at this point. And we are not going to be able to change our RVs enough to do 38 extra damage, unfortunately. So regular Feraligatr is a little bit worse, but luckily most people aren't running regular Feraligatr. Most people are running that Shadow Gator action, especially now that we are running through these, remove frustration events. People that sort of didn't have one in the previous rotations are getting their brand new Shadow Feraligatrs sort of up and running a little bit, so something to keep in mind. But again, if you're up against a Feraligatr, don't swap your Corviknight into Feraligatr, and maybe try and avoid it if you can. But if you do get there, hope that you have an energy advantage at all to try and secure the matchup. Another one where Sky Attack kind of helps, and if you land an Iron Head bait, it's high risk, high reward, in the sense that it's a very expensive bait move. It's not really a bait move like Drill Peck would have been. So it can go pretty wrong for you if they call it correctly. So keep that in mind. As we said a little bit earlier, Galarian Corsola, one of the other sort of, brand new additions to the game, and similar concerns around its accessibility. I hatched one today that was actually pretty decent. But anyway, in the 1-shield scenario, we're not looking too good with straight Sky Attack. You can see we're losing with 10 turns difference. Actually, getting Astonished down, because each of these Astonishes is doing 5% of our HP, which is quite a bit, and Corsola is so bulky that these Sky Attacks are only doing 1/3, and because it takes us so long to get there, we're not quite at a 3rd move, but if we could get to a 3rd move, you can see that we're not quite going to KO. So it's not just about having the energy advantage to throw the move, but I guess the important thing here though is going to be the IVs, because a lot of people do not have that good IV Corsola yet, so we'll look at that as well. But quick shield scenarios is terrible for these sort of Drill Peck, come on man, get your head in the game. Iron Head Sky Attack. But what if we go for Payback? Because Payback is the move that we're going to be able to do super effective damage into the Ghost type Corsola. So in the 1-shield scenario, it doesn't help us. We go double Payback, we land 1 Payback, it does 76 damage. It does over half of Corsola's health. But the Sand Attacks just aren't adding up enough. It doesn't care about Sand Attack. And, we just can't get there. Interesting that we are going for the Payback here. I guess PvPoke has sort of done the math and you can't get 2 Iron Heads going. 36 energy remaining. This costs us 60, so 96 total. 96 energy is almost enough to get 2 Iron Heads off. If we add the tiniest little bit of energy. Okay, so we need a few extra Sand Attacks to actually get to the point that we can get this last Payback. We don't actually quite have enough with 2. So I think 3 Sand Attacks, all of a sudden, we would be able to get, again, you're hoping that you sort of succeed with getting an Iron Head bait and then land an Iron Head in a Payback. It's a pretty dicey scenario and not one you'd really want to be in. This is looking, again, if we look at the IVs, this is looking at the sort of pretty decent IV. 5, 15, 14 with a sort of, 46.5. What if you go the Egg IV Corsola? 10, 15, 14, rank 558. Does this one hold up to scrutiny? And unfortunately for us, still able to Astonish us down. The Payback's still not quite KOing it. And, no matter what our IVs are, I don't think that this 18 is going to budge that enough for us to sort of overcome it without having some sort of advantage, I guess. But this is pretty rough for us. 2-shield is terrible as well. Just because they're doing so much damage with the Astonishes that they don't even really need their charge moves, right? At this point, we've both shielded 2 moves each, and they've Astonished down half of our health, and it feels like we've barely tickled Corsola, even though we're so deep into this matchup. So yeah, pretty dominating stuff from the Corsola matchup, and I'm a little surprised on the surface level, in that when I heard that Corviknight was going to get Payback, in my head, I assumed that this would be a better matchup for Corviknight, but in reality, just not the case. Corviknight into Azumarill. We saw this one on the sort of scrolly matchup thingo. Corviknight does actually lose this one straight Ice Beam versus Drill Iron Head, but we are running the Iron Head Payback, so obviously we're going to lose because Iron Head Payback, Azumarill doesn't care about either. As soon as we throw Sky Attack into the mix, Corviknight is able to sort of get the tight win, landing 2 Sky Attacks here. This is noting with the Iron Head bait. Let's remove the chance of an Iron Head bait. If you go all Sky Attacks, we still win, although Azumarill is getting close to being able to win here. One more bubble and then a turn to be able to throw the Ice Beam, and they will KO us. And I think that's regardless of our IVs. Like if we go maximize, attack weighted probably isn't going to be, attack weighted actually does the job a little bit better, just it gets it slightly faster, so Azumarill gets one bubble less. But if we go to the rank 1 overall maximize, then we still win. Same scenario, Azumarill still needs that one extra bubble to be able to throw the Ice Beam, and we don't have any more health to be able to survive the Ice Beam. So it's a scenario where if Azumarill has an energy advantage, Corviknight won't actually win the matchup in the one shield scenario. And an Azumarill with energy is a fright for the Corviknight, which makes a little bit of sense because it is a flying type. So you're a little bit like, well, you know, are you really supposed to be beating Azumarill? But the steel typing really helps it. But look at this. We not only win the one shield, but we win the 0 shield and the 2 shield. Now, the 0 shield, zero shield looks like it could be IV dependent, and it most definitely is. I mean, we have 3 HP remaining here. This was the rank 1 Corviknight. Let's go to the default. Let's, claw it back a little bit. Already, as soon as we lose a little bit of rank, so any egg IV, you're not going to survive this. Anything except a really good Corviknight IV is going to lose the 0 shield matchup into Azumarill. Again, I don't know how often you're going to expect this. Although, actually, look at this. It's going to be IV dependent on the Azumarill side as well. So actually, maybe I'm eating my words here. What if we have, let's say, the best ever level 40 Azumarill? Corviknight wins again. So it's actually going to be a double IV dependent matchup. It depends how good the Corviknight is and how good the Azumarill is. If they are both as good as they can possibly be, Corviknight wins. Whichever one of them loses that little bit, essentially whichever Pokemon is a better rank probably wins, which is kind of a crazy thing. But how often are you going to see this 0 shield scenario play out? I don't know, but the 1 shield is pretty solidly Corviknight's. The 2 shield, let's take a look at what's actually happening here. We're KOing with the Sky Attack. It's doing way more than we need it to, so it's not going to be about IVs in terms of how much health the Azumarill has left, and it doesn't really matter how much damage we're doing with Sky Attack either, because it is 3 times as much health as Azumarill has left. And again, this is going straight Sky Attack, no Drill Peck baits. And actually, maybe we should have checked if Drill Peck, Iron Head baits. You're just going to have to forgive me, guys. Someone go through and count how many times I say drill in this video, because it's going to be a couple. Let me know. But look, it's going to be pretty good for Corviknight of the 1 shield, pretty good in the 2 shield, not great in the 0 shield, but it is going to be that IV dependent scenario. So, which is pretty interesting to note, and I'm sure that Tomahawk UK is going to get pretty keen in sort of optimizing that Corviknight in all possible scenarios, and he'll be able to just see how quickly an Azumarill health is going down, and he'll be like, "Yep, I can win this 0 shield." It may not have been on the Birmingham graphic, but Dunsparce is still around. It is still doing well. And something that's really interesting to note, well, one, we are losing this one. Oh no, this is a 2 shield scenario. We've started with the 2s. We're losing the 2 shields by 1 turn. But part of that, that I thought was, part of this matchup that I thought was quite interesting is how well Corviknight can tank the Rock Slide. So take a guess, without, knowing how much it does, what percentage of Corviknight's health, being a flyer, do you think that a Rock Slide does? And 3, 2, 1, the answer is 23%, which isn't nothing. It's not some no move, but it's also relatively low in the sense that you need to land quite a few rollouts to actually get quite a few Rock Slides to get the job done here. So in the 2 shields, we roll out. We land 1 Rock Slide. We land 2 Rock Slides. It's still not enough, and we get a few more rollouts to sort of get the win. We're just going straight Iron Head on the Corviknight side, but we're losing this by 1 turn because we have an Iron Head ready to throw, and we just can't throw it. Again, I don't think you're likely to ever come across this Corviknight versus Dunsparce 2 shield scenario. It's one that you can maybe try and remember if you want to learn every possible matchup. It's not the most important one. The 1 shield is going to be much more common at the very least. And in the 1 shield scenario, you can see that we are winning this with an Iron Head bait. and then landing an Iron Head and a Sky Attack. But I feel like if we go straight Sky Attack, we probably still win this. Yeah, we do still win this straight Sky Attack, and it's again a scenario where our Sky Attack is doing way more damage than Dunsparce has health, so it doesn't really matter how much bulk the Dunsparce has, it doesn't really matter how much attack we have, but one thing to note is that our HP is getting a little bit low, and so is Dunsparce's, but if Corviknight is coming into this Dunsparce matchup, having already taken a hit, taken a blow, Dunsparce is probably going to be able to take the victory here. So if you've got your Corviknight into some matchup that you sort of dominate, like, you know, you've just taken right down a zero shield Annihilape, right? They just let it go. You Sky Attack them away. The counter damage that you've taken pretty much guarantees that the Dunsparce will be able to come in and actually KO your Corviknight relatively handily. And so I think that is sort of a dynamic that you will just have to be aware of, because I think that when you're running these bulky Pokemon like Corviknight, you really do like the ability to just sort of like keep taking moves from all over the shop, but you have to be a little bit more careful in this one, just noting that, you know, Dunsparce could potentially, or depending where you are in the game, if you're in an end game scenario, this isn't going to be that good for you, and you are really going to want to try and maneuver around it a little bit. In the Zero Shield, it's just straight, they throw 2 moves apiece. Again, our Sky Attack is enough that it's going to KO, and they're still another 2 rollouts away from getting their next charge attack. So we're not super scared, but if Dunsparce has energy advantage as well, that is going to become a problem for us. So I think the moral of the story on this one is that Dunsparce isn't a dominating matchup for Corviknight. It's one that in general it can do decent into, but as soon as one or the other has an advantage of any kind, if you have shield advantage or energy advantage or health advantage, you probably are going to win the matchup. So it's a very neutral matchup, and one that isn't as doom and gloom. Corviknight is an RPS Pokemon as some people seem to be making it out to be. But, well, I guess I say that, but let's look at this Pokemon Talonflame, which I think is going to put that to shame a little bit, because, I mean, Talonflame just incinerate. It throws the Brave Bird here in the Zero Shield and incinerate, but like, if we actually throw 0 charge attacks, no, Corviknight does win, because you get 2 Sky Attacks off. Because, okay, so the bulk of Corviknight actually does help it quite handily. But, you know, as soon as we put a charge move on here, let's just go Fly, because Fly is sort of the worst charge move in terms of it's not as good as Brave Bird in terms of damage output. It's not as good as Flame Charge in terms of its super effective damage into Corviknight. Straight Fly, you are going to be able to win the matchup in the Zero Shield, and you actually win all even scenarios. I keep saying scenarios, but we even win the ones because we outpace, and the Incinerate damage is really chunking. Each Incinerate does about 16% of Corviknight's health, and so you don't need that many to sort of chunk it all the way down. And so this is what you would call a dominating matchup. And, you know, if we go like Typhlosion, it's going to be even worse because we have the Thunder Punches as well. So like Thunder Punch, you know, we get double Thunder Punch. One Thunder Punch does over half of Corviknight's health, and the Incinerates are doing 20% of its health. So you can really just, you know, quickly map out in your head, like, oh, 3 Incinerates plus a Thunder Punch. That's bye-bye Corviknight. And so it's a really hard scenario when your Sky Attack is... Actually, Sky Attack, you are going to do almost 70% of the Typhlosion's health. So maybe Corviknight with energy, you might be able to get the win here. You can actually see that we're getting close to our second Sky Attack in the one shield. That would be enough to KO. We're not going to win any evens, but the Zero Shield gets close. And the reason for that is just the sand attacks. Because, you know, if you get your Sky Attack through, they get their Thunder Punch through, they're going to KO you on the third Incinerate. But our IVs here, I mean, look at this. This Typhlosion has 1 HP remaining. So if the IVs are a little bit different, if you have the tiniest bit of attack, if they have the tiniest less bulk, and we know that like when you've got a Shadow Pokemon like Shadow Typhlosion, it's not the easiest thing to get the exact IVs you want. And so they're not necessarily likely to have the greatest IV Typhlosion. So let's say they're running, you know, I don't know, an 8, 13, 15 or 9, 13, 15. We hit battle, Corviknight is able to win, because that 1 HP just doesn't hold up to muster when we land this Sky Attack. So we're not going to win any of the other even scenarios. Like this is just like, oh, we at least get the consolation prize of getting a Zero Shield win in there. But it just sort of goes to show that I don't know how fair this is. I guess it depends on the caliber of your opponent. If you're playing one of the best players in the world, they've probably grinded a little bit more to get a good IV Shadow Typhlosion, and you'll probably lose the Zero Shield. I can't speak today. If you're playing someone that maybe isn't, they're not as much of a grinder, they don't play this game as hardcore, they're someone like me who like, even, you know, I PvP a fair bit, but I don't really grind the game too much when it comes to IVs, you can probably beat me in the zero shield scenario as the Corviknight against my Shadow Typhlosion. And that's an important one to know because I love my Shadow Typhlosion. So is, I guess, something to keep in mind that maybe just another difference to play depending on how you are playing into, or depending on your read of the caliber of your opponent. Because also, you never know when someone just has like, oh yeah, I've got the rank 1 Shadow Typhlosion, and all of a sudden you might be looking really, really silly. So maybe play it safe, maybe, you know, learn something in game 1 before you go into game number 2. Obviously, it doesn't help you as much in the Go Battle League, but maybe you can sort of use your elo as a bit of an indicator. Like maybe if you're legend rank, you can sort of think about it a little bit more. Corviknight versus Dewgong, the last one on that top 12 graphic that we haven't looked at, and we can see going straight Icy Wind here, Corviknight is going to lose the 1 shield. Does actually win the 0 and loses the 2. Now, what actually happens here? So it looks like they get their final Icy Wind off that is sort of more than enough to KO us at the end here, and we aren't that close to our next charge attack either. So it's not exactly a close matchup, but we are getting an Iron Head bait as well, and so that's maybe a little bit better for us. I mean, Iron Head here does 44 damage, Sky Attack does 54 damage, so it's not really like, that's not the thing that's really moving the needle here either. It really just is our ability to get another Iron Head through that would sort of close out this game. And so a scenario where if Corviknight has energy, we'll actually be able to win this matchup against Dewgong. If you don't have energy, then it's a little bit worse. And the 2 shield is just going to be even worse because you're getting debuffed just at a faster pace. Or you're getting debuffed more before you can start doing charge attack damage. If you look at the 0 shield scenario though, we get the win here. How and why? So we land a Sky Attack and 2 Iron Heads. Okay, so I guess the big note here is we're landing the Sky Attack before we get debuffed. Then as we get debuffed, we're throwing these Iron Heads, and at this point, they're well enough to KO. But look at a HP. I mean, this is not a guaranteed matchup at all. As soon as we're a little less bulky, again, if we're running that egg IV, 2 kilometer egg IV, that 10, 14, 15, I have a feeling that all of a sudden, yeah, Corviknight does lose the 0 shield scenario. And then even if like we go back to our default, and maybe their Dewgong does a little bit more damage, maybe they're attack weighted. Like it's super attack weighted, rank 3,900. Actually, Corviknight is still able to win that as well, so maybe not the end of the world, but I think based on how little HP is remaining, there is going to be an attack weighted combination for Dewgong that would be able to win this. So look, again, not a guaranteed one, something that a good Corviknight will potentially help you out a little bit with. Not necessarily a matchup that Corviknight is going to want to be in either. It's Toxapex. Corviknight, it's doing absolutely nothing. We have 91 HP left in the 0 shield scenario. I mean, look at this. 2 0 shield scenario, and the PvPoke rating is 635. I mean, that's pretty dang good, to say the least. It doesn't matter what moveset we have. We can be running straight payback, and I'm pretty sure... whoops, I can't click. I think if we run straight payback, we're still winning all shield scenarios. Yeah, we're still winning all shield scenarios. Straight payback, our most expensive move. Granted, it is the most efficient move, but you know, it is what it is on that front. But last Pokemon of the video that we're going to look at is Mandibuzz, which was in the key losses column in the PvPoke default rankings. Look, we've got 8 turns loss here, and what's actually happening, they land this Aerial Ace that does 20 damage, not a whole lot, into our 15 HP Corviknight, and we're getting KO'd. It's really these Dark Pulses that are doing a lot of the work. They're even like getting the no bait in terms of we're correctly shielding a Dark Pulse, and they're correctly shielding a Sky Attack, so we're not getting the bait, but we land an Iron Head here, and we're not that close to another move. Even if we get another move, okay, another move would be enough to KO. This is one where we would need quite a bit of energy advantage to essentially get an extra move off to be able to KO the Mandibuzz in the 1 shield scenario. Bulk versus bulk, and you can actually see that Mandibuzz has more HP than we do. You can see that we've got a stat product of 2,082, which sort of translates to how bulky you are, the bigger the number, and Mandibuzz has 2,425. So we're just getting out-bulked on this one, and Mandibuzz taking the W in all even shield scenarios. Azumarill in chat, Skarmory matchup. Look, I'm pretty sure this is another one where Corviknight is just going to be out-bulking Skarmory. Skarmory doesn't really have anything to hit us that hard. We just have the extra bulk to be able to stomach it and push it all the way through, and so we're going to win. Actually, we do lose the 2 shield mirror, Oh, okay. We win if we use one shield and they use two, but all of a sudden we lose if we use another shield. I think this is some PvPoke shenanigans. It throws a Brave Bird straight away. So yeah, something weird. So the way this table should read is Corviknight wins the zeros, Corviknight wins the ones, but Skarmory wins the twos. As soon as Skarmory uses two shields, Corviknight is going to be in trouble in that one. But I really don't think, like, I think one conclusion that we can sort of come to here is no one is going to be using Skarmory anymore. You are going to be using Corviknight instead of Skarmory. I know Jonker's put out a video that he used both. He used Corviknight and Skarmory, but he was using Corviknight with Ironhead Payback. Let's get to the end of the video without saying Drill Peck again. He was using Ironhead Payback because he had Skarmory to cover the flying roll. And so I think that's quite a non-traditional use of Corviknight, which sort of opened the door to Skarmory potentially, but I really do think that Corviknight is going to be the brand new Skarmory. I think Skarmory is out, and it is what it is. But as far as it comes to movesets, I really didn't see anything today that told me that Payback was the way to go. I understand that it is the more efficient move if you can only sort of like, it's the more efficient move. It does more damage in neutral scenarios than Sky Attack does. I understand that, but it just feels like having that ability to go for that Sky Attack being a little bit more spammy is going to give you more than Payback is going to give you when you can't even get the win into something like Galarian Corsola, which is one of the only Pokemon that having that Payback type advantage would actually help you out with. So in my eyes, Ironhead Sky Attack is definitely the move to go for, but it's a brand new Pokemon. It's literally been out for like less than 24 hours. So we're just going to have to wait and see how it actually plays out as we sort of get into the Go Battle League, as we see the Championship Series unroll. Another key takeaway is that Corviknight is such a bulky Pokemon that even if you have bad IVs, you've got so much bulk on board already that you aren't losing that much. And so I really think that even if you build a bad Corviknight, you just build the first Corviknight you get because you want to play with it, especially now that we're in Go Battle Week. I think you're going to be not too bad off. And it's not a super expensive Pokemon in the sense that if you get a better one down the line, you can just build another one and it's not going to set you back too far, unlike something like a Galarian Corsola. So, build it when you're ready. But other than that, I think yeah, you should be fine. With that said, thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, especially that subscribe one, and I will see you in the next one, where I think we're going to be doing a meta simplified for the Little Jungle Cup. So subscribe if you want to stay tuned for that, and I'll see you in the next matchup mastery series as well.